Welcome to our Energy Connect studio at Gastech 2022. I'm delighted to have sitting next to me Joe McMonigle, Secretary General of the IEF. Really appreciate you giving me your time on this busy first day of Gastech.
It's great to be here, yeah. We're excited to be back in person again somewhere, right?
Yeah, and obviously Gastech in Milan, in Europe. I want to get straight into your viewpoint of what the current situation in the global gas market is.
Yeah, sure. Well, unfortunately, I think the worst is still likely yet to come. I mean, obviously there's disruptions, all over the world, but I think we can expect things to get much worse. And, I think we have to learn some lessons, of the past. Essentially, I think last winter was sort of a preview of what we're going to be seeing this winter. And of course, that was even before the war in Ukraine. So you have all the extra pressure that's going to add to the situation. But I think we're in store for a big problem in Europe. But I think it's also important. This is not just a Europe story. This is something that's now spreading to other parts of the world. I was recently in Indonesia and in Thailand, and they're experiencing, essentially gas is being priced out of the market for the developing world. So really, I think certainly we're reading about and the media is focusing on the Europe situation, but really it's the developed world that can't afford, is just being priced out of the market. Yeah. And this is something that, we're trying to focus on because it just doesn't get enough attention.
Yes, and I think that sort of goes again back to maybe looking at the root cause of this current energy crisis, which might be Europe, but it's sort of global picture, which I think everyone has to really look at and see maybe if in some views, has the energy sector been mismanaged, which I know that you talked about in the article.
Well, I mean, the big problem is there's just a lack of investment,
Right.
And certainly COVID had a damper on investment in the sector over the last 3 years, really. We'll find out what 2022 holds, but certainly in 2020 and 21, there was a big reduction in CapEx investment by companies, and it looks like there's a repeat this year. But even before the pandemic, there was, there's investor pressures, there's a couple of different investment pressures. One is just a better return on investment because the sector hadn't really been doing that well compared to tech or healthcare sectors. So you have investors just want a better return, and now with the industry, the pricing and everything, they want to take advantage of this situation. But the other one is, of course, ESG pressure and sustainability investing and all sorts of pressure regarding the transition. And I think we have to recognize that we're in a period here where, we're going to see high prices and volatility for the years to come. Until we get a handle on this investment. And the IEF warned about this in 2020.
Right.
In our report, we said that investment has to increase in the oil and gas sector upstream to about $525 billion annually for the next decade, essentially, just to meet very conservative levels of demand. A lot of people would argue with that number. They would say it needs to be much higher, but at least that's what we came up with working with S&P Platts.
Yeah, and that sort of goes back to, obviously a lot of the media and analysts, how we solve this energy crisis. Energy prices are going up, but, what would be a solution that sort of is compatible or comparable with, net zero? How can we work with the sort of demands of these net zero targets?
Yeah, well, I think the world is starting to realize that there's a lot of low-cost ways to net zero. And by the way, there isn't just one pathway to net zero. There's multiple pathways. I think we have to start avoid using, and I do it myself, this word energy transition. Yes. It's really energy transitions because every country is going to have its own transition, and so I think that's probably the big answer here.
Yeah. And obviously we're here at Gastech. What kind of role natural gas can play in the road to net zero, but also, as you were saying, the developing world being priced out of the gas and LNG market,
Well, I think the big danger for the transition or transitions and really, aggressively attacking climate change is we have to manage the transition, right? We can't, the high prices and volatility really is worrisome because if the public starts to connect
Yes.
high prices and volatility to the energy transition or climate policies, we're doomed. I mean, it's the type of situation, I know at least in the United States, if you lose public support on
Turns
such an
against it.
existential issue, it's very hard to get it back.
Yes.
And if we want to keep progress going, we have to manage this, and we haven't done a very good job with this. We've taken our eye off the ball. I mean, one of the things I'll be talking about at Gastech on my panel is, one of the things we have to learn is, we have to be cognizant that we need energy. I mean, even some governments have renamed the ministries that deal with energy to be the Ministry of Ecological Transition, and energy is now removed from the name of the ministry. And the answer is we have to do both, right? We have to keep finding energy today to power the world economy and make sure the developing world, has access to energy. At the same time that we aggressively pursue the transition. And we just have to do both, at least until there's some alternatives to
Yes.
oil and gas, because right now there isn't. Wind and solar only get you about halfway. You need new technologies or perfecting technologies like hydrogen or carbon capture, use, and storage.
Still early on, and you can hear that in either debates or the companies you talk about, pushing that. Just before we end, we're coming up to the end of the year, and we've obviously got ADIPEC, but also COP27 in Egypt.
That's right.
What are you doing around COP, but also maybe also getting the messaging right? Be interested to hear your viewpoints of that.
Yeah, well, I think it's important that COP is in Egypt, and actually the next 2 years. I mean, it'll be in Egypt, and next year it'll be in
That's
the
right.
UAE. So really we're taking, we're probably going to have a different perspective and a different look at the COP, process. And I think it's good that it's the developing world and different regions of the world, because it has a little bit of a European viewpoint, I think, which isn't bad. I mean, I think it's a good challenge for the rest of the world, but not every part of the world is like Europe. And so I think that's important. We'll be focusing a lot on carbon capture, use, and storage. Hydrogen, which is a big topic here, gets a lot of attention and also gets a lot of dollars and investment, but CCUS, not so much. And we need to really dramatically increase investment in CCUS. In fact, you can't really even have economy-wide uptake of hydrogen unless you have a vibrant, CCUS. So we'll be talking a lot about that. We're actually doing our own, the IEF IGU gas ministerial meeting in Cairo on November 23rd and 24th. The Egyptians are hosting it for us, so that'll happen right after COP. So we'll have a chance to really assess what comes out of COP and figure out what's next for the gas markets. And of course, it'll be a very pivotal time in the middle of the winter for Europe.
Interesting, Joe. Well, we'll look forward to that, and hopefully see you at ADIPEC. And again, just thank you for popping down the Energy Connect studio.
It's so good to be with you.
Super, Joe. Thanks everyone for watching.